Ready?
1 second.
It's a recording.
It's recording.
Hello, good evening, and welcome to episode 21 of Unforced Errors. Two old guys talking about tennis and saying the things that the commentators, the paid professionals, don't dare say.
They would lose their jobs.
They would. We'd take them, wouldn't we?
We would.
We'd get paid.
Yes.
There's a thought for any TV executives listening. But today's topic is going to be, is tennis the best sport in the world? And I'm opening the post bag already. Got this comment from Maria, who says, I think it's one of the best to play. So that's good from Maria, distinction between tennis, the best sport to watch or to play. But she goes on to say, I think it's impossible to choose the best sport for watching. So we're going to prove her wrong with our scientific study. David, what do you think? We're bound to pick tennis. This is a tennis podcast, or are we?
Even I don't know the answer to that question. And you know how addicted I am to tennis.
Well, they say your first love never dies. Your first love is your true love. Was tennis the first sport you fell in love with?
No. Well, the first sport I played was when I was 5, and it was table tennis, ping pong.
Ah, okay. And was it called table tennis or ping pong? Or
we call it ping pong.
Whiff waff, as Boris Johnson calls it?
Ping pong is the name that we use in Portuguese.
And how come it was the first sport you played?
Because my father was actually playing pro level in Angola.
Excellent.
Yeah,
okay.
He was very good. He was one of those that slices all the time.
Backhand and forehand?
Yes, I'm the opposite. I'm always flat.
Flat, right.
Yeah, exactly. But I did learn to slice, which is great. But the first sport that I fell in love with, in terms of watching and following on TV, was football.
Ah, well, you're rather a good footballer. I know you're very modest, but yeah, you were top notch.
I used to be, not anymore, I think. What about you? What was your first sport?
My first sport that I got into, I suppose, was football.
Makes sense.
I was born in 1971. In 1978, there was a very big World Cup in Argentina, and I can remember that being on TV. You know, you come home from school and there'd be a match on. I think my Uncle Roy got me a kind of World Cup 78 little football top with the logo of the World Cup on it. And that's really what started me off, really, that football top. I loved it so much, dressed up in it, and imagined I was playing for a team. So in a way, fashion got me into sport. I love football, and then from then on, you know, playing at school, getting into the school team. So that was my first love until really tennis was very popular in the late 70s with Bjorn Borg. My parents got into tennis, I think, because of that. So I used to go down the local courts with them and play. And then suddenly I had a wife and a mistress, in terms of I had football, my wife, and tennis, my mistress as well. So it was there was a battle for quite a few years. And then I think it's fair to say that tennis won over. But I've still got a very soft spot for football.
So what age did that switch happen?
Well, I first got into football when I was 7, and then tennis maybe when I was about 9. And then there was this battle, I suppose, until I went to a school which didn't play football. Football was frowned upon at this school, and rugby was the sport. But they still had tennis. I think tennis won over from that age on. Maybe it says about me that I'm more of a loner than a team sport player. And I'd love to be a team sport player. But I think maybe the solitary nature of tennis and just meeting up with a friend, and it's just you create your own little world, you and your friends in this match. In terms of playing, watching is a different thing though. You can love one sport the best for playing, but prefer another sport to watch.
Definitely.
You find.
What you just said actually is one of the first answers to some of the questions that we will have today, which is, there's the advantage of tennis in one way. You only need to find one person to play, whereas if you play football, you need to find a lot of people.
With tennis, I read an article about what the best sport in the world, and I read an article singing the praises of tennis, and it said you only need one person for a tennis match. This was an American article, so maybe backboards are more common in American clubs, where you can just play against a kind of a board or a trampoline.
Still at within, while I'm waiting for players, I hit the wall. It's really fun,
I didn't
actually.
know that.
Yeah.
I wondered what that noise was just before I come down to the steps for a match.
I loved it because
I thought you were hammering a nail.
It's great because I always annoyed the aerobic classes that make a lot of music sound really annoying.
That's a good thing, yeah.
Yes, so we had our revenge. So since we're talking about is tennis the best sport in the world, let me start by asking you, what are your favorite 5 sports? Include watching and...
Let's merge them all together. And maybe first we should define what constitutes a good sport, what do you look for in a sport. But I would say it would have to be... I think indoor football, I'm going to sneak that in there because I love using the walls. That's what I love about indoor football. It's kind of fair in play. I would say running has jumped into my top 5 list, and it satisfies that a couple of sporting criteria, really, in that you can just go for a run by yourself at any time. It's cheap as well.
It's free.
Okay, they'll say you need to buy 70 or 80 pounds trainers. But you could just go for a run in your shoes if you're walking in between bus
Barefoot.
stops. You're often in competition with yourself. You're not in competition thinking, oh my God, David's 200 meters ahead of me. That's a really good thing. I also think with running, it's what I call a natural sport. It's a sport, if you're good at, it can have a real life benefit. If you're running after that tiger because you're hungry for your dinner and you need to shoot that tiger. It's a real thing, whereas table tennis, I love table tennis, one of my favourite sports, but you're never going to save someone's life or avert a crisis or an emergency by hitting a good sliced table tennis shot. So like boxing, which I'd probably put in my top 5 as well, you could box your way out of trouble.
So boxing, running, football, tennis, I assume?
Yeah, I'm going to sneak tennis in there. I'm not going to say whether it's my favourite sport just yet. I don't want to give a spoiler alert. I'd also put swimming in, although I'm terrible at swimming. I'm going to put it in terms of wishful thinking because I'd love to be good at swimming. It's another real sport. It is useful. If your ferry sinks or something, you can swim to safety. Your top 5.
Well, swimming is, in my opinion, the most complete sport of them all. The healthiest, the fittest. You just use all your body.
Does anyone ever get injured swimming?
Never. Maybe the only injury could be slipping and hitting their head on...
Well, that worries me when they dive in off the boards.
Okay, so to answer your question about my favorite 5 sports, it's quite difficult. They definitely changed over time. It used to be football. I used to dream about being a football player. I was very good back in the day. Football was the number 1 for a long time. Tennis was always there. So I always loved tennis since I was a kid, watching Agassi and stuff. And table tennis, ping pong was definitely the one always there as well. So those 3, top 3, for sure. Now the other 2 are very debatable, even in my mind, because I love handball. I would jump over everyone and score 1,000,000 goals. So I would say that's probably there. But recently I have fallen in love in the last few years with a sport that I never thought I would like. And I will never practice this sport. UFC.
Right, so that's kind of cage wrestling. Yeah. Conor McGregor?
Yeah, exactly. Fighting.
Yeah.
It's just all martial arts mixed up and challenging each other. It's very interesting to see how 2 men or 2 women with different styles of fighting collapse.
Now, what appeals about that, and why do you prefer that over many of its rivals, like boxing, for instance?
Because it's the only real fighting sport. Everything else has rules that does not allow you to express yourself fully.
So it's a kind of lack of rules.
Lack of rules, yes. Yeah. I mean, of course, you have rules because you can kill them. But, I mean, it's the most complete fight possible. Boxing is definitely limited to punching, and there's mega gloves. It's a very powerful sport. I only fell in love with it recently.
So this makes it possible for you to love a sport that you've never done yourself. Because most sports we love watching doesn't always follow, but you've enjoyed playing at some time in your life.
True.
But this, would you ever give a bash to UFC if there was...
Because I've never been in a fight in my life. I always had this...
Really?
Never been in a fight. I watched that movie when I was a teenager, Fight Club, and there's this sentence. How do you really know yourself if you've never been in a fight? It does make sense in a way because you know what punch you can take and you know your physical power, isn't it? So I would love to try once, but I think I never will.
I'm still reeling over you've never been in a fight. Can we make this the topic of the episode instead of the best sport? That's something to be proud of. It shows that maybe, you can diffuse confrontations before they become to the physical fight stage, or maybe because you're big, you look strong, people are put off.
Could be a number of things, or not being tuned into an aggressive frequency attracts.
It could go either way. The fact you've never fought, you might not realize you have this incredible talent, and you can.
Who knows?
Or the first person who hits you, you might just go down like a feather.
Yep, exactly.
It could go. I want to know
but
now.
But it's positive to feel at least once how a fight goes, to at least learn from the experience.
To know your limits.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
To know your place in the world, almost. If you're going to be, if we're going to get back to caveman kind of things, to know your pecking order. But you've managed to find your pecking order without getting your hands dirty.
Yeah, I probably would be
a good achievement. So you never look at someone in a pub or something if they're kicking off and think, if things get nasty here, I could take him, or I would walk away. You never.
I stay away. Yes.
Yeah.
I don't like physical confrontation, but I love verbal confrontation.
Right.
Yes, I like that debate or that back and forth.
A lot of sport is kind of discussing it and getting into kind of arguments because you're passionate about it. I think that's one of the advantages of a big sport like football, throughout the world, really. You can go to any pub, any cafe and talk to a stranger about football, really. If you throw a stone, you're going to hit a football fan. Less so for tennis or handball,
yes.
Depending on where you are, what country. Mm-hmm. I think that draws us to sports sometimes, the fact that you can be sociable and say, oh my God, what are Liverpool doing playing three at the back? Sometimes it's a badge of honour, though, if you like a little sport, and then you meet someone who's into the same sport. It's like, wow, you found a friend on a desert island.
It's a great feeling. Watching sports together is still to today. It's such a joy, isn't it? I love watching alone, but watching with a good friend.
Well, before I met you, I never had a tradition of watching tennis matches with anyone else because people just weren't interested, really.
Yes.
Whereas in football, there's more of a tradition.
Very easy.
Hi, Bill, do you fancy coming round, watching the game tonight, bring a few lagers round?
Yes.
So it's really nice to meet friends and you can text during a match and
yes.
stuff.
And it's funny because football, with observing how football players behave more and more, with all this acting and trying to get red cards and yellow cards and penalties and falls all the time, football has just died.
So you wouldn't watch a match now? Or?
I still watch World Cups and Euro Cups by nations. It's funny because now if I look at it, tennis is so much more entertaining because, and here's a point for tennis again, which is there's always a point going on, whereas football is so boring sometimes. There are so many dull moments, so many matches 0-0, 0-0, so many falls and so many actors. Football needs renovation. That's the problem. Where's the passion? Whereas in tennis, you really, if you throw a tantrum, you will pay for it.
How would you renovate football then?
It's very difficult to put it into words very quickly, but definitely a lot more technology, unfortunately, to pay attention to this. I would definitely start giving red cards to players that throw themselves on the floor immediately. Yeah. If you don't want to be in the spirit of football and you want to go against it by cheating, then red card you. And that would immediately stop lots of shit that is happening in football these days.
But with tennis, you kind of want more tolerance of...
It's very interesting, isn't it? It's the complete opposite.
Behavior.
Well said.
So that's interesting.
I like that.
You've got a difference.
Definitely. Yeah, because football is dying because of that. Not dying because football is never going to die. People in the world are mad about football, but football is definitely boring, unfortunately. There are beautiful moments because football is a wonderful sport. I would even say probably the best sport in the world. But it's so many cheaters. It's a shame. Look at Neymar. Neymar is an example. You go on YouTube and you will see...
Fantastic player.
Player. What would these players...
But it's normal. It's normal, his behaviour. It's not even
completely
seen as
normal.
Cheating. It's seen as being
part
professional.
Of football. There are teams that are practicing this, throwing themselves on the floor to get red cards and penalties. It's horrible. And this is anti-sport. And that's why I would go for controlling more these losers. In tennis, you don't have to control so much because it's right there in front of you. It's out in the open. You see it immediately.
Yeah.
Tantrums, throwing balls. You can't cheat. There's no confrontation in terms of physical confrontation unless you jump the fence and go hit somebody with your racket.
Well, I think I'm touching on the point you made earlier. I think technology has brought the confrontation out of tennis.
True.
You know, in John McEnroe's day, it was like, that was out. That was out.
Yes.
That's why I lost the match.
Yes.
You umpire.
Exactly.
You've lost me that match. But Hawkeye has gone, okay, if you think that was the wrong call, you've got 3 challenges. So the blame gets shifted from the umpire to the player. Whereas in football, that hasn't happened. The technology,
Not at all.
there's still lots of arguments.
They are refusing to evolve in football. It took so long for the Hawkeye to join football. Something as simple as the ball, was it in or was it out of the goal? A little
Even that's
camera.
not working.
Yeah.
Yeah, it isn't, but it's slowing down the game, and the referees are scared to make decisions in football.
They are.
So, and the same in rugby, unfortunately, which I think is a great game. I don't know if you've watched it, but their technology, it's not up to the players to go, okay, I challenged that. You've got
Yes.
3 challenges.
Or
per
the
half.
coach.
They don't have it.
No.
Which would be great. It's the referee goes, I'm not sure about that. Can we check what happened 20 seconds ago to
Yes.
see whether that was a score? And it's breaking the rhythm of the game. And I think that's a great thing about technology. Players still have the say over when the technology is used.
True.
And I think that's a big advantage of tennis.
You touch on rugby. It's very interesting because rugby is the opposite. It's a sport that there's no cowards. It's funny because they hit each other with so much violence and there's never crying and acting like in football. If I was a tyrant in a country, a dictator in a country, I would put all the football players in an arena with weapons, and whoever got out alive would become a football player. Honestly, it's just please.
Like gladiators.
Gladiators, yeah. Where's the passion if you... Anyway, we already spoke about that.
Well, you
Let's
can
move
be a
on.
coward in football, but yes, in rugby, you can't be a coward. And I think rugby is so physical and so intense that they don't have the time or the energy to play act or argue with the referee.
I know somebody a good friend of ours, that would love to be in this conversation about rugby. An ex-rugby player, Stephen.
Of course, yeah, we should have him here. Because I want to know, Stephen, is tennis the best sport in the world? Because you love tennis, but you also love rugby, and I think he loves a variety of sports, really.
Okay, so there are my 5 favorites, more or less. Oh, by the way, there's many sports in the Olympics. Okay, I would say if Olympics comes
It's almost a
together,
sport in itself.
Yes, the Olympics is like almost better than everything, almost.
Good call. I forget about that. And it's one of many kind of things where I'm only interested in athletics when it is the big Olympics.
Yes.
But what can be more exciting than watching a 100 metres final in the Olympics and they're all lining up and there's a full start? This is the biggest moment in their career. They've been training for 4 years, probably longer than 4 years. And when that gun goes, they've got less than 10 seconds to prove that they're the best in the world.
Exactly.
And can they do it? Can they pass the drugs test afterwards? It's just so exciting.
It's amazing.
I remember watching the Ben Johnson final in 1996 and the gun went off and Ben Johnson, he went off so quickly. I think he had smoke coming out of his arse. I remember turning to my dad and saying, if he goes any more quicker, he's going to take off like an aeroplane.
It's wonderful. And Bolt beating the world record, slowing down and celebrating before reaching the line.
Wow, great. And just
Incredible.
reinventing sports. Someone that tall
Yes.
with that build
Insane.
could win and be such a nice guy as well.
As well, yes. And a lot more. I love everything about the athletics. I love the weightlifting, the shooting, the swimming, the volleyball, long run, those ones that they have to really think.
Triple jump, long jump,
pole vault, everything is fun.
Love the Olympics.
But unfortunately, we can't put the Olympics as one sport only. That would be unfair.
I think we should be allowed to. So I think that would be my 6th choice.
Yes. Would you feel the same about winter sports? Because I've never followed, because I was always very far away from winter. Is that as special as athletics?
Winter sports were a big thing in my childhood, actually, because we had a couple of skaters called Torval and Dean. Have you heard of them?
No.
They were ice skaters, and there's this competition, I don't know the technical word for it, where a man dances on the ice with a
yes.
woman.
Ivona
And
loves that.
Britain, for some reason, was very good at this. We had quite a few ice rinks. There was an ice rink in Brighton. It was the kind of place you'd go on a first date with someone.
I took a girlfriend on a first date to ice rinking once.
I feel very sad here. I never actually went to the ice rink, which shows how successful I was at dating.
I was not very successful either.
But we're not a winter country, so it's bizarre why that happened. But maybe, surely this influences sports. Who was the big sports person at the time? If we are to say tennis is the best sport, will we be saying that in 20 years' time if the tennis superstars of then are quite boring and there's no dominant figures? And suddenly the football superstars are amazing. Will we be having the same conversation in 20 years' time and going, football is the best sport in the world? Does it depend on who is king and queen of the sport at any one time?
I like that perspective. There's more variables to that choice. Yes, I definitely believe that there can be swings. But if we were to ask the whole world, the billions that live on planet Earth, to vote what's the best sport in the world, football would win.
I think it probably would, though. India is a vast country, and India loves its cricket,
which is one of the most boring sports in history. Sorry, cricket lovers. I never found it interesting. I prefer baseball.
Well, I'll come clean here. I do like cricket, and this brings me to another point on how you judge a sport. Should sport mirror life? And I think cricket does, in terms of it can be very slow. The long format of cricket can last up to 5 days.
Yeah, it's true, isn't it?
And with cricket, you get lots of draws. You could have a whole series.
Yeah.
They could all end in draws. And life's a bit like that sometimes, you know. And also, in cricket, you have a bad day, you know, a bowler bowls you out, you don't get another chance. That's it. It's gone. Whereas in tennis, you hit a bad shot in the first point of the match.
You can hit millions more.
That's not the match over.
No.
And that's a bit like life too, you know.
Yeah, that's true. You have one opportunity there.
One mad instance where you do something wrong or you don't do anything wrong.
Yeah, you say the bad line to the girl and she's gone.
Yeah, something like basketball, which to me, there seems to be a score every 3 seconds. That, to me, mirrors life less. And sometimes it's nice to escape life. And have that escape. But that's why I quite like cricket. I think as the older I get, the more I think cricket is like life.
And do you watch it?
I do. Again, as with many sports, I watch the big matches. But you must try and go to a game. You might just like it, but you prefer baseball. Why do you prefer baseball?
It's more
cricket?
spectacular.
Yeah.
You can home run. There's really funny games going on. But I'm sure if I would get into it and pay attention, I would start to find every sport is special. Even that weird one where they throw something in the ice and the other ones go with brushes, with
bizarre,
brooms.
Yeah. Well, I can't even remember what it's called. Curling, is it? Curling?
Is it curling? Yes.
No one even knows why it's called curling.
Even that must be fun somehow, some way.
Yeah, it's quite exciting when you watch it, actually. Same with bowls. It's the same principle.
Yes, exactly. You touch now on basketball. I have to mention, basketball is an amazing sport. And I followed basketball like a madman back in the days of Magic Johnson, Michael Jordan's, etc., etc.
Did you play?
I played a lot of basketball, but just for fun. I was always terrible.
But you're very tall. You should be good.
I
You're
know.
agile.
And do you know
you're
how
fast.
many? Do you know how many times I've heard that from people? Everybody said, "You must be good at basketball."
But that didn't stop you loving watching it. That's
definitely
good.
not. Watching Michael Jordan was a sight to behold.
Yes, I watched the recent Netflix documentary about the Chicago Bulls.
How many
and Michael
times
Jordan.
did that guy hit the winning shot at the last second?
It was almost like it was scripted.
It was scripted,
Yeah.
wasn't it? Oh my God, how can you do that? It's madness.
Fascinating. And although I'm not into basketball, I was absolutely gripped
Me neither, not anymore.
by the Netflix documentary, if you've seen it.
Great documentary, yes.
Really good.
Yes.
And I didn't know what happened, so I was watching it.
Yeah. One of the most impressive moments for Michael Jordan was when he was 40 degrees fever.
Yes.
Dying in the final. Every time he was sitting, he had a towel on his head and he was just dying. And then he got on court and he still scored more than everybody else. That guy was phenomenal.
I can't even play tennis if I got a broken fingernail. So full respect to him.
Full respect.
I read an article about it, as I mentioned earlier, saying tennis is the greatest sport. And it mentioned quite a few things I disagreed. It's very cheap to play, and I disagree. I think tennis
Who wrote that?
is expensive to
Tennis
play.
is one of the most posh problems
It is,
on
but
earth.
maybe in some other countries, I think the article actually said it's free to play. You can go
Maybe
to a
in some
court.
countries.
So maybe in the US, where this person wrote the article.
Well, the US is one of the best countries for people to do sports because universities and the school, they pay attention and they even have scholarships. If you're very good at a sport and you're bad at mathematics and whatever, they offer you an opportunity to become a sports person. There's
Lucky
those
buggers.
lucky.
I mean, let's look at the basics of it. You buy a racket. If you buy a decent racket, you're
It's
looking
already
at 100, 120
something.
£20. Great, you got that racket. Lovely, you're set up for life. The strings go.
The
You want
strings go.
good. You want good strings replaced. £20. I can't afford that. Okay, you buy a stringing machine. Oh, okay. How much is that?
Yep.
Well, that's selling you back
£200-300,
£200,
yeah.
but you'll earn your money back. Don't worry.
Then you have to buy the
Yeah.
strings.
Okay, right. Well, I'll pick up these tennis balls while I'm here. That'll be £7.50, please.
Jesus Christ.
Okay, well that's going to last a year. No,
Nope.
you're
Two
you're
matches.
gonna lose one because the people on the public court next to you are going to nick it without realizing, or. Really, after about 3 or 4 sets, they start to decline in territory. Even the local dog won't play with the ball. Tennis shoes, I go through those at an incredible rate. I always put my toe through them. It must
Terrible.
be my
And
service
they're
action.
expensive.
They are. If you buy some cheap ones from
They go
Sports Direct,
in a
40
month.
quid. But I've had them go the very first
It's
match.
crazy.
So you're really looking at 100 quid, and maybe they last about 7 or 8 months.
Yes. And then court booking.
Court
Thank you very
bookings,
much.
yeah. I mean, Brighton's been taken
£8
over
per
by
hour.
entrepreneurs, and it's £8 an hour. And
Minimum.
that is for an hour. And if they enforce that, I mean, really, to have a decent tennis match, if you're a serious player, you need 2 hours, don't you?
Yes.
So an hour is absolutely
Yes.
nothing. If you're doubles players, okay, that's
Nothing.
only two quid each.
And then if you want to become a professional, that's when the real hurdle of expenses starts.
Well, yeah, definitely. You've got the air travel, got your hotel accommodation, your
Teams,
coaches,
taxes.
your coaches coming through with you. So it's really only the
It's
world's
madness.
maybe the world's top 100 who are kind of making a
Yeah.
profit.
It's one of the most expensive sports that I know of.
And we're slaves to the weather. You book that court for £8 an hour, and it's bad weather. I'm not too sure you get your money back under
Yep.
this new regime we're on.
Yeah. And if you don't want to pay per play, you have to make a membership, which will cost 100 or 200 or 300. You see, now we minus 1 point to tennis.
Definitely. I mean, it sounds like we're anti the expense, but public courts I think should be cheaper. Governments should be encouraging people to exercise.
Yes.
And I'm sure that if you go down Preston Park for a game of football, that is free.
Yes, and there's a point for football there, or many sports actually, team sports, which is the more the easier it is in terms of costs. And look, one football is enough for 22 players in a pitch. There's definitely a good point there for team sports, especially the ones that you can play outdoors. It's very difficult to choose what's the best sport in the world. But I guess what me and you will have to do is we'll have to be personal about it. Yes, we're going to have to choose depending on what we enjoy and what we don't enjoy. Isn't it? Watching and playing sports.
Yeah, we're forgetting about watching. But I think all these things we've listed, which are horrible about tennis, these are disadvantages, but they prove our love for the sport. We put up with these things.
True.
It's not an easy sport. So on those sunny days where you're hitting the ball so well and seeing it like a football when you're hitting the tennis ball,
Incredible.
you think all those times when I struggled with my tennis, it makes it worthwhile.
It does.
The bad things about tennis make it so good.
It does. And there's another point for tennis, which is in many sports with contact, age matters a lot. I have noticed in myself, when I was 20, I would get hit with the knee and I would sleep, and the next day I would wake up completely healed. Now it stays for a few weeks. And so these contact sports are definitely more, let's say, dangerous in a way to older ages than younger. So tennis is less dangerous in terms of injuries, and more longevity.
That's an important criteria for a sport. I
is.
think, when you take up a sport, can you see yourself still playing at 60 or 70? And I think that's possible with tennis. I think if you're very careful, people like Roger Federer are pushing back the barriers, aren't they? They're still
True.
playing in their late 30s and
It's because
seriously
it's
competing.
tennis.
And you can graduate to doubles. So that's a great thing. I think it's a big thing with the sport that you can still do it when you're older, maybe less so with boxing and these contact sports with
Absolutely.
football.
Then there's a few more, but one sport that is even better than tennis in longevity, which is ping pong. You literally can play ping
Yeah.
pong until you're dead.
I saw a great film about 10 years ago about elderly table tennis players
Yes.
who were still competing in national championships.
Great level. Yes, it's really good sport. I think the only sport that would outlast table tennis must be shooting, targets. Well, what is called that thing?
Yes, again, it's an Olympic sport.
Yeah,
isn't it?
Olympic sport. You can just sit there and calmly point at the target
Yeah.
and shoot.
So do you see yourself, a 70-year-old David, will you be playing table tennis and tennis or just table tennis or
Both.
both?
Yeah, as long as my body allows me, I'm definitely going to do it. Definitely not football.
Not football.
No, definitely not basketball.
Right, okay. You still play football now?
I still play football from time to time, but because I'm very dedicated to tennis, I kind of stay away from football a bit. So it's enough to make me happy. What about you?
It's good to have several sports, isn't it?
It is.
I'm very glad I'm not just into tennis.
You
I'm
do
into
running? Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Running?
I'm running after I did the marathon, or during the marathon. I'd never really run before too much, but I really got into that. It's sometimes not as sociable. You can go for a run with a friend, but I'm glad I'm into a variety of sports. And sometimes of the year, I find myself more into a sport than at other times of the year. Sometimes it's nice, dare I say it, is this sacrilege to have a break from tennis and just have a
It
few
feels
weeks
good.
where you don't play, where the
Then you
weather's
miss
not
it.
good and you don't beat yourself up.
Yes. I'm very curious because we have to choose. Is tennis the best sport in the world?
Yes. And one of the reasons
Why?
it's the best sport in the world, I think, is it allows for comebacks. You can have the worst day in the world. You can't hit the
Oh.
ball. You can't even pick up the racket in the knock up, but then
Suddenly.
you turn it around.
You might even not hit the ball right until 6-love, 5-love.
And
then,
vice versa. You can be king of the world trying to hit the ball out and it's still going in. And then suddenly,
boom.
yeah, you don't know where you are or what day of the week it is. And I love that about a lot of sports. Every good sport should have room for a comeback. And I think every sport would claim that you can have a comeback in it. But I think tennis has room for lots of comebacks. So that's what I love. And that's what maybe drew me to tennis. Bjorn Borg having great comebacks at Wimbledon and then winning the whole tournament. And I thought, I get into sticky situations like Bjorn Borg, so that appealed to me. I can't get out of them like Bjorn Borg, but I could relate to him getting into sticky situations.
Yeah, exactly.
So, but anyone who said, Jim, you're talking rubbish, tennis isn't the best sport in the world, I think, yeah, there are other sports who could make very strong arguments. But for me, sorry, this is a tennis podcast, and it is the best sport in the world.
They're all wrong, isn't it, when they say tennis is not the best sport. I go with tennis as well because it's just my favorite to watch, my favorite to play. And if I would have to describe the pleasure of tennis, I would describe it like this. The motion of grabbing the racket and pulling the arm back
Pulling the trigger.
and pulling the trigger, hitting forward, hitting the ball and seeing the ball go forward into the place that you guided it for a winner, for a drop shot, for a great lob. It's so full of pleasure. And it's funny because, yes, scoring a goal is an orgasm. It's in football.
So what's tennis's equivalent of an orgasm then?
Tennis is like there's too many little orgasms, which
There's
makes
more
it...
orgasms.
There's more, yes.
More orgasms.
Yeah, exactly. Because football, there will be 2 or 3. Great.
In a match,
They're
yeah.
powerful. They're very intense. but they go and they don't happen all the time. Tennis just, it's one after another, and if you're in the zone, like you said, you were talking about, it's just, you disappear from reality. You become one with a movement, a motion, a ball, a racket, an opponent, a tennis court.
Your racket is your arm.
Oh, yes, tennis is just, it's beautiful. It really is.
To reach that stage, I find very rarely in my tennis life where I don't actually want the rally to end.
You just
I want it to continue, and I only want to end it on a really high point. And I want my opponent to get the ball back so I can touch the ball on my strings again.
Yes.
And I've had that maybe 2 or 3 times in my tennis career very vividly. I just think I've got to play every day so I never lose this feeling, and don't forget.
Well said.
The magic little thing I'm doing, which gets me in this position. Then winter comes, you hang your racket up and you lose it, and you come back on the court and go, how was I playing so well? What was I doing? What was the magic little thing?
Tennis is intense. That's
the one. And you can't write it down in a book. It's an instinct.
It is.
That you feel. But I would say to my son or anyone, if they said what sport to take up, would you recommend to be my sport for life? I would maybe not say tennis, because I think it's the best way to drive yourself crazy as well. It's like golf, I think, is also a great way to have a heart attack. Those days when you can't hit the ball for love or money.
Golf is another good sport.
It's the best. Tennis is the best sport in the world, and the most frustrating too when it doesn't go well.
Maybe one of the best to learn about yourself and your emotions as well. I mean, your whole life crosses in front of you sometimes when you play tennis. You understand a lot about how to control, keep yourself calm, let go of obstacles. So
Pace yourself.
For sure. Yeah. And now you reminded me of a big orgasm in tennis. There you go, a very long rally that the crowd starts getting more and more into it, and there's sound coming, and suddenly it ends in an incredible winner or some absurd miracle shot from outside the lines, and it somehow goes in. Tennis has big orgasms too.
It definitely does. I was playing today early in the morning, and although I was losing the second set easily, there's still those chance for those magic moments where you go, okay, this is going to be the best rally of the match, or okay, I've lost 6-3, 6-love, but I could hit the best shot of the match.
Yes.
Yeah, it can be an absolute magical sport. I think it's changed my life, really.
Yeah, me too.
It really has led to me meeting different people. Yourself, that's how we met.
Led us to UFE.
We met on the tennis court, and the rest is history. And you've introduced me to people,
and I've
become friends as well.
True.
So it's a snowball effect. And
do you still remember how we met? My memory.
I think you came over and said,
I invited
hello,
you in a court, wasn't it?
Do you want to play? Here's my number. I'd be keen to play. And we played, and you beat me, and it set the pattern for the rest of our tennis rivalry. Really, straight sets. I think it was 6-3, 6-4.
We had incredible matches,
and we went
lifetime.
to the cafe afterwards too.
Wow! I remember now. Tennis is awesome.
It definitely is. Do you play well when your life is going well? Is there a relationship between that, or when you suddenly start playing well, your life starts to go well? Do you find life and tennis are
entwined?
That question.
I think tennis and life are definitely intertwined, but there are people that have more ability to separate both.
Yes.
I think tennis is always that moment outside life. So even if you have a bad day, tennis can actually make up for a good day.
Yeah.
So I think tennis, most of my life, it always has been positive for bad or good moments in life. What about you?
So tennis can make a bad day good if you play well.
True.
And vice versa. You could be having a good day and then you lose 6-1, 6-1, and suddenly wasn't a great day.
True, but then you disconnect from it. You just let it go. But yes, the moment of losing sucks.
I think mostly, yes, they are intertwined. If my life's going well, my tennis is going well, and vice versa. Yeah. There are some exceptions.
There's definitely a connection.
After my son Noah was born, I think my tennis did drop off a bit. I was playing less. That's a sacrifice you're willing to make, really.
Yeah, exactly.
Isn't it? And maybe he'll get into tennis too. So me losing more matches will all have been worth it. Part of God's big plan. It's great exercise, great for your mind.
Yes,
So
definitely.
I think something creative and something sporting, if you can find those in life,
I think it's very
I think
important.
you'll have a lot more focus in life. And
Definitely.
purpose.
And better body, better mind, release of energy, release of stress. I think sports is an essential part of life.
It's great sports.
Exactly. Thank you for coming, Jim. That's
No,
been
thank you.
a great conversation about sports. A side note from me and Jim is we weren't able, of course, to talk about all the sports in the world, and we love sports. And maybe in future episodes, one day we shall speak about extreme sports, racing sports, esports, and other types of sports still to come.